All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I now call to order this continued meeting of the Council of Town of Blackstone. Just a few items on the agenda tonight. I want to try to set the groundwork, and I'll have the town manager fill in the gaps, but basically, make a long story short, no one's on trial tonight. This is a review of a conditional use permit the council granted back in 2015. At the first time it granted the permit, it was for a 6-month review. In February 2016, council at that time was satisfied. There had been no serious complaints. Council voted, I believe, unanimously at that time to have a 2-year review, which would put it February 2018. Well, like so often will happen in local government, we forgot. This summer, there were some complaints made on social media about alleged behavior of some residents walking down the streets, threatening gestures, or maybe some relieving themselves in public. I don't know whether they're true or not, and something triggered in my mind. I believe someone pointed out on Facebook, there's a review. So I contacted the clerk, and sure enough, there's a review. That's why we're here tonight. And I think the history of this is that the current owner bought the facility in 2007. It was for years a very docile retirement home, and the change of ownership was certainly not a secret. It was known, but no one really said, "Hey, town council, the mission changes," and that's not the owner's fault. Just one of those things that happen. She's licensed to the state properly, in accordance with state law, but it's just one of those little glitches in a small town zoning. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Our ordinance at the time didn't say assisted living facilities specifically, which you could argue then therefore it's not allowed. But to try to avoid litigation and try to avoid something that would be cumbersome and costly, the council and Celestine Hicks reached a compromise and granted a conditional use permit with several conditions, which are in the packet and which are a matter of public record. And Mr. Brunebeck, you pick me up from there.
I think you hit it pretty well. The reason the conditional use permit was requested is originally Clay's Rest Home, I think, was a home for people of a certain age. And our zoning ordinance that was created in 1992 did recognize rest homes as a legal use by right in the business district. And believe it or not, this is zoned general business, that piece of property, as is the nursing home and the parking lot that goes along with the nursing home and the old medical center property. Okay, they are all zoned business general. Rest homes are a permitted use there, but I don't remember what the stimulus was, but in 2012 or thereabouts, 2013, I don't know if it was a complaint or I don't remember what started it, but we started discussing it with Celestine, and the type of resident had changed. It was no longer an age restricted. It was more that it was an adult, and it fell more into a category. And we actually had a planning consultant come and help us a little bit and create some definitions to comply with what the state code is. The reason a conditional use permit, I was just speaking with Celestine, is an adult care facility and a assisted living facility. Adult care facility by our ordinance and by the state code allows 8 adults to reside in a single-family home or in a single-family setting as long as they meet certain social services criteria for licensure, building code compliance with exit signs and that sort of thing, and certain hours of staffing. The town must consider that to be the equivalent of a single-family home by zoning. We can't require a conditional use permit for fewer than 8 or fewer residents.
An example of that that's lawful would be Jan's home on North High Street.
Well, it's supposed to be under 8, and they have a zoning permit for 8. She just showed me that on the State Social Services website, its capacity is as many as 12. But it's only permitted 8. It is not in the general business district, and it does not have a conditional
So we
use
might need to do some housekeeping on that as well.
tomorrow.
Okay.
But they do have a zoning permit when they started that allowed them as an adult care facility under 8 or fewer. You don't need either rezoning or conditional use permit. Okay? And I think what it was is communities like ours or around the state may have said, we're not going to permit these. We don't necessarily agree that they should be in this particular location, or maybe the neighbors weren't terribly excited. So the state, I think, has stepped in over the past years and dictated that 8 or fewer has to be allowed as a single-family home.
Very good.
Okay?
We will go into public hearing, and I'm going to, normally at a public hearing, you first entertain those who are in forward. This is a review. Council tonight could, I'm going to just lay on the table, council could extend, recommend denial. Will it go back to the planning commission?
Yes.
Does the planning commission have input on this?
Tonight is really just
to hear.
Informational meeting and for
okay.
people to say their piece. By state code and by our zoning ordinance, any modifications to the permit or the conditions or the proffers have to have planning commission review at a public hearing, and then town council will also have
So we might be doing this a little backwards, but we wanted to hear from the people.
you'll have two more at least if there's a modification to the permit.
Right, council tonight may decide, hey, we're satisfied. So what I want to do tonight is, who here tonight has concerns about the facility? Okay, I will entertain those persons first and then hear from the facility itself, because there may be some charges that the facility can answer or some concerns. So open mic night, who has concerns, maybe opposed to the conditional permit being extended? This is, if you're concerned or opposed, this is your time.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Miss Benell's not bashful.
I'm Janet Bennell. I live at 801 Lunenburg Avenue on the corner of Lunenburg Avenue and 8th, just down the street from Clay's Assisted Living. I want to first start by saying that I, more so than most people, understand the need for facilities like this to address the needs of certain populations. I have an 18-year-old adult son with autism who hits fight or flight mode fairly consistently and becomes very aggressive, and we have an amazing police force that has been out to my house probably 8 to 10 times since April because he has escalated so rapidly. We are working on a pharmacological intervention with him right now. He seems to be doing better, so we're very pleased, but I do understand the need for places like this. I have a nephew who unfortunately needed a facility like this too to help get him through some rough points. So, I don't come here as a cranky middle-aged woman because somebody's walking in my yard, some young whippersnapper or something. That's not my role here tonight. But while I understand the need for facilities like this, there is also a need for oversight to be provided with facilities like this in order for them to function properly. So I have a prepared statement, if you will indulge me. Okay. And I believe you have a letter that I
Yes.
sent to council as well. When I moved here in 1999, Clay's Rest Home was a charming facility added to my neighborhood in a positive and meaningful way. In 2007, it was sold. As I understand, in 2015, Mrs. Hicks came to council for the approval to move forward with a conditional use permit as the mission and purpose of the facility had changed. I was at that meeting. I don't know if you remember, but I actually said to you, I think this is a great thing. I support you. Oh, sitting right there. Okay, so my track record, I was okay with it. And again, because of my own personal history with my son and other people who I've known, I understand that. I'm also a speech language pathologist who works with some of that population at the Woodland in Farmville. I'm also a licensed nursing home administrator, just to set the record straight as well. So at that time, council and Mrs. Hicks agreed to several conditions, including a 6-month review and other items, including a 9 p.m. curfew. For some reason, Philip has discussed that, council decided to make that review every 3 years, and in so doing, allowed their oversight of the facility to lapse and the neighborhood to deteriorate consequently. However, in the past 3 years, it has become increasingly apparent that the residents of Clays appear to be predominantly more mental health status than assisted living or special needs even. There has been an increased amount of traffic on Lunenburg Avenue and 8th Street, back and forth, and it has become increasingly disruptive. Twice, and there is a police record for this, I and my husband have both called the police because of threatening behavior from a resident walking down the street. In fact, I have a date, August the 7th, I think is the event that set all of this into motion. There is a record of that. I was in my yard and a resident was walking down the street and he was yelling and talking, and I looked over at him and was just kind of looking at him like, what's going on here? And he approached my driveway and he said, "You don't want none of this. Bang, bang, bang. Don't come over here." And I was like, ooh. "Hey, Blackstone Police, this is Janet Bennell. I need you to come out here." And they did. They responded. He was very aggressive in his stance. My husband had an encounter earlier this week. He called the mayor and spoke to him about it. I believe he spoke with our police chief as well. So, when a business is located in a residential neighborhood, that business has a strong obligation to contribute and enhance the neighborhood in a positive and meaningful manner. Clay's Assisted Living, as it exists right now, absolutely does not do that. There is an apparent lack of supervision at the facility and administrative oversight, which is trickling down into the neighborhood and has changed the atmosphere on the street from safe and enjoyable to somewhat trepidatious and fearful. I don't like to be in my yard alone anymore because of the incidents I have had with residents. I don't want my son in my yard alone on my property, which I own, because of incidents we have had. I don't want my grandchildren in my yard because of incidents we have had. When grown men are walking down the street yelling and talking to themselves and pointing their fingers at me and shooting, that is a problem that needs to be addressed expediently. Council was notified on August 7th of that incident, and here we are on November 14th, just now addressing it. I'm curious as to why our leadership has not called the Virginia Department of Social Services when you take into account the number of police calls that have been made in the last 3 years. I believe the number cited in the paper was 67, which is and the Virginia Department of Social Services is a licensing agency for the facility to report these incidences because the safety of the community is becoming a concern. I reviewed the recent inspections from DSS on their website and found a pattern of continued noncompliance with the rules and regulations required for licensing. I noticed the facility remains on a yearly licensure instead of a 3-year license, which indicates that DSS is aware there is a problem with compliance. And that problem with compliance has, as I said, trickled down into my formerly peaceful neighborhood, where we now have these residents residing there who walk in the middle of the street, do not move for traffic, adopt threatening stances toward anyone who is in their own yard, and who are engaging in acts of public indecency, including urination, and who are not in the building at 9 p.m. On several occasions, I and my husband have seen them walking back with Dollar General bags in hand, 9:45 and 10 o'clock, which is a direct violation of the special use permit. Also, I recall that residents having good conduct was a condition as well, and we clearly see they do not. Another violation was that residents would take their medications as prescribed, and in September of this year, the facility was cited with instances where medications were not administered. This impacts the safety of the residents, denies them their rights, and then trickles out into the neighborhood where we have clearly seen that it negatively impacts our quality of life on our street. I am curious as to the resident to staff ratio, the policies and procedures, how many staff are present at a given time. The Virginia Assisted Living regulations state that staff needs to be sufficient for the population, so there should be enough staff to assist residents, for example, out in the case of a fire or event, so knowing the staff number would be good. I'm sure council can request those records and call out those, and the call-off records for staff, who calls off, and the frequency as well. I would also recommend council request training logs if they can to determine if appropriate staff training for the mental health population claims services has been conducted in a timely manner in accordance with state regulations. And I want to state that in 2005, I supported their mission. I supported it. I think I was one of not that many people who did, if we're going to be honest about it. And in that time, I have seen a decline in the quality of the facility and in my neighborhood. I want to stress that the leadership of our town has a strong ethical and legal responsibility to ensure the safety of our neighborhoods and to ensure that anything which they have oversight of that might damage the quality of the neighborhood be addressed. I would like for council to move to consider reviewing the special use permit at this time. I understand you do have the power to revoke it, or at the very least moving to a quarterly review with a goal to enforce stipulations and to add stipulations as necessary. By quarterly, I mean every 3 months. And I believe that you owe that to the residents of the neighborhood around Clays. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I do.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Miller.
Okay. I'm here and I respect your profession. So, what do you really want done?
What do I want done?
I hear what you're
I
saying.
want my neighborhood to be safe.
Okay.
I want to be in my yard. I don't want people threatening me.
Okay.
I don't want to feel like my son can't take the trash outside because that's one of his chores.
Right.
He doesn't have a lot of them, but
Right.
that's one of his chores.
Okay.
That is what I want. I want safety in the neighborhood.
So safety is your number one priority.
Safety is my number one priority, yes, sir. And to also ensure, because I've been on the Department of Social Services website, I have seen the violations. I believe there were, I can't remember the number, but there was a review there on the 18th. And, you know, and you do see some non-compliance there. I'm also concerned, because of my profession, about the safety of the residents and their quality of life and their resident rights. And I believe that we have someone else here who will speak to that in a moment, who has a stronger eye for some of those things than I do.
So your number one concern is safety.
My number one is safety. Yes, sir, absolutely.
And I have a question for the owners of this.
Well, you go ahead, but I like to keep it somewhat orderly, but go ahead.
What type of people do you have?
I have people that have mental illnesses, and they are not, and I have statistics to show, they're not any more violent than anyone else. The police may have come several times, but it has
67.
not, come as a result of the residents attacking anyone in your community.
I promise you, we're gonna hear from her later. I don't wanna get to the point where we're talking to each other, but I do appreciate that, and I promise you're gonna have adequate time later. Who else besides Mrs. Bennell would like to express concerns or complaints?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennell. Yes, come forward and state your name and for the record, all that good stuff.
Yes, my name's Phil Green, and I live at...
I don't have my glasses, I'm sorry. That's how blind I'm becoming.
Billy! Thought you were joking.
No.
I live at 111 8th Street, which is right down the street, 2 houses down from Janet. And I just wanted to also share with you some of my experiences of what's been happening over the last few years, to reiterate some of the same safety issues. One of the council members here actually called me and said they'd seen a resident urinating in my yard on more than one occasion, in my front yard, which I find really crazy that they would do it right in the front yard. I've also had to call the police for someone was in my backyard smoking next to my propane tank and drinking. I've also called the police for someone in the alleyway behind the dumpster drinking. That's what it was found out they were doing. They were hiding and drinking. Someone else was acting, this has been several years ago, acting very erratic and actually fell down the basement steps of my neighbor's house. And the police had to come and take him away. We've had somebody come up the front yard and approach my husband talking strangely about weird things, and he asked him to please get off the property. And we do definitely see the people going down the street talking to themselves and loudly and things like that. So again, it's a safety issue. I do have young children. I'm not really excited about them being out in the yard either. They've been approached and talked to when they're out by themselves too. So, I just wanted to let you know that not only Janet has seen these things, I've seen these things personally myself. And there are probably a couple other incidents that I can't think of. This is all right off the top of my head, so things that I remember.
Are these people, individuals that were seen, like the drinking, whatever, are we 100% sure they're residents of Clays? Okay.
That's what the police told me.
Okay.
One lady, actually, when I was at the stoplight once, a woman came up to my door and knocked on the window and wanted me to take her to Richmond. And I actually called the facility that day and described the woman, and they said, oh, yes, she's a resident here. And I said, well, you might want to go down to the corner. She's trying to get a ride to Richmond somewhere, And same thing with the one that fell down the basement steps.
Right.
He was
Any questions from Mrs. Green? Thank you, Mrs. Green. I believe I saw Vicki Buckley's hand up.
My name is Vicki Buckley, and I live here in Blackstone. I don't have as much of a lot of experience with any of the residents, specifically from the facility. I live a little bit further back. But I recently, when this issue came out, started getting some information about it. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm currently an assistant director of nursing at the Woodland on the long-term care facility. So I'm looking at this from a little bit different perspective. I work with vulnerable adults and elderly residents and residents with mental health issues and other concerns. And my concern, and I only went back, I'll just be honest, I only went back a few inspections. I'm used to inspections because of state inspections from the facility where I work at. I know what they're looking for. And it's concerning to me for the safety of the residents that are there. There are multiple violations, and that's from the, the Virginia Department of Social Services, regarding medications not being available for residents that need them. Now, in these reports that are obviously public knowledge, they list the medications, and these medications are medications that are important. We're not talking about vitamins, and you miss a vitamin, or you miss a stool softener, you miss a scheduled dose of that. That doesn't have really the potential to kill you or harm you or cause you to have anything from if the medications are psychotropic medications that could affect your mental health. Those medications aren't going to cause it. But the ones that they were on, it was documented in here, hydralazine, that's a medication that's given for blood pressure regulation. Well, if you don't take it and you miss multiple doses of it, you can obviously have issues with your blood pressure. Well, that can cause a stroke, it can cause an aneurysm, it can cause death. When you're talking about being on medications that are for mental health issues, not taking those medications consistently can cause erratic behavior and psychosis and psychotic episodes. Now, I don't know all the residents that are in the facility. Based on what I read and highlighted, when they came and they did the inspections, I noticed on the one that was done September 10th of this year, the facility at that time had 53 residents. Only 8 residents were reviewed based on this document from the Department of Social Services. Only 8 residents' charts were reviewed, and they had a few medication errors there. So it has to lead you to wonder, well, out of 53, they only reviewed 8. How many other ones would they have found if they had reviewed everybody? And what they said was that medications were not given, and it was due to the medications not being available. When you work in a long-term care facility or in a assisted living or anywhere, when you run out of medications, it's the responsibility of the facility to refill those medications. Well, these adults, they're vulnerable. Like I said, I don't know the medical history or mental health history of all of these residents, but you aren't in an assisted living facility usually unless you need some sort of assistance, and so therefore they are considered vulnerable adults, and they rely on the healthcare workers to give them their medications. And most of the time, if they have cognitive deficits, that they might not remember or even know that they're missing their medication. So again, not to point any fingers, but I guess for me as a nurse, I have a real issue with knowing that I believe that this facility is not, that the staff that cares for the residents there are not LPNs or registered nurses. I believe they're medical technicians, medical assistants, maybe CNAs. I'm not sure. But regardless, we have a responsibility as healthcare workers to care for, and we take an oath, we make a commitment that we're going to care for these residents. And you don't get to use the excuse that you didn't have the medicines available. And what was even more concerning was there was one report, and I believe it was from a few surveys ago, I've got it highlighted in here, where the physician was not, there was a resident, they have them just numbered in here, resident 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and had a significant list of medications that were significant medications. I'm talking about psychotropic medications, and the physician was not notified. This resident was refusing medication. The physician was never notified. Well, if you're a physician, you have a patient who's living somewhere, that physician assumes that unless they're notified, unless they've heard something, that this resident or this patient is being taken care of. They trust us to do that. Well, there was no notification. So it then makes the physician feel they're taking care and that these residents are cared, and they're not. So something is just, like I said, my concern is for the safety of the community, but I'm probably as much, if not more, concerned for the safety of these residents, and who's there running this, who's overlooking this, and why are there more than one issue here? When you have a survey and you have these violations, this is no different than it is in a long-term care facility. You have so many days to provide a plan of care
Right.
and to correct these actions, then there should not have been repeated ones.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else who has concerns, and I want to assure the facility you will get a chance to answer any and many of these assertions as you wish to. Yes, sir. I think you're a first-time visitor to Town Hall.
Yes, sir. Chad Forehand, live on the corner of 8th and Lunenburg, kind of right in the highway, if you will. Residents leave coming and going. I moved to Blackstone May of 2018. Was told about the facility being there and people walking up and down the road. I'll be honest with you, was probably naive to it. Didn't think it would be an issue. I don't personally have children, but I've been standing on my back deck right on Lunenburg and children playing out on the street and doing whatever. And gentleman steps out in the road, turns around, walks maybe 3 feet off the road and just starts urinating right there on the road. I did not call the police. I didn't honestly think, just kind of let it go. There's been times where mowing the grass and you just doing your thing, mowing the grass, and you turn around and there's a gentleman just leaning on the fence and you ask him, just politely what's going on, and it turns into this whole charade of how much am I getting paid to cut my own grass and what am I doing back here and stuff like that, and it's nothing to engage an argument with. And now that I know that there's so much record keeping going on, that's my fault for not calling the police. Didn't think the police force should have been used in that situation. They have, in my opinion, more important matters than to be talking to people walking up and down the street. There was a time, and I didn't know this till tonight, it was 9 o'clock, it's the curfew. It was probably 8:45 right in front of our house on 8th Street. An elderly lady walked out of Clay's and just sat down in her walker in the middle of the street. We did call the police on that instant because it's getting dark and there's a lady sitting in the middle of the street, and just told her to keep going. I mean, if we're worried about time, I couldn't have walked to Dollar General and back by then, much less with a walker. Just to tell you that as a current and future potential home buyer, with the activity that is going on, I would 100% be honest with you, telling you I would not buy in that area of Blackstone, much less Blackstone. It would not hesitate to tell others in the future as well. Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forehand. Anyone else? One more thing, yes, briefly.
I just want to also say, though, for the people here who may not have a medical or healthcare background, there's a lot of comments being made here that residents are going out and they'll just start urinating, they'll just start doing this. I think everybody does need to keep in mind that these residents who are doing this, they do have mental illness, and this is not anything that is purposeful or intentional. While it's disturbing and we do have to keep that in mind, and I think the focus here really does need to be what can we do to help these people who clearly need it. And that is one of the things that was reported in these. There are some safety issues for those residents in this facility with regard to things not being repaired, lancets used for blood sticks, blood draws, things like that being left out. So the safety of these residents inside this facility is also a concern.
Right. And just to delineate just for a little bit, I'm not trying to take exception with any comments that have been made. A question was asked about why the town officials have not gotten involved. And I may be wrong on this, and town manager Mike can help me, but the State Department of Social Services, I don't believe I'm qualified to tell them how to do or not do their job. But I am able to read the reports, and I've read some of these reports. They are concerning. But I think my issue as mayor and this council is this governing body has adopted a set of rules, and one of those rules was a 2-year review, not a 3-year, but a 2-year review. It's been almost 3 because and I'll take the rap on that. I just forgot about it. We're going to make sure we put it on the docket for February 2020 or sooner based on how this hearing goes tonight. But that's the issue before this council mainly is the behavior. And and it's a conditional use permit. The town manager will tell you, he's been a county administrator. Conditional use permits give the local governing body tremendous latitude. But there are two sides to every story. Members of the facility, Ms. Hicks, your staff, this is your opportunity to state your case or whatever you'd like to, to refute or address some of these concerns. I will tell you that I know the people that spoke, and I've been to a lot of public hearings in my life. I do believe these people, and I don't think I don't for a minute think they're fabricating this to try to affect the outcome. I do, and I've heard many of these stories I heard over the summer. So,
Okay, first of all, my name is Celestine Hicks.
yes.
And I do work with Clay's Assisted Living. Thank you. And I would like to comment on just a few of the remarks that were made earlier. Number one, even though the police have responded quite a few times, in fact, the young lady that was up here, the very first one, she's had incidents herself where the police had to respond to her house. And I'm sure she loves and cares for her son in a great way, but yet and still the police were still called. And they still responded because of aggressiveness and some other issues. So it's not only in an assisted living. It can be in your own private home if you have people that have certain kinds of mental illnesses. Okay, it's just not confined to just one place. That's number one. Number two,
Well, Ms. Hicks has the floor, and just in fairness, Ms. Bennell has graciously acknowledged her situation with her son. So,
right, but I just wanted to make that
we've heard
comment.
that. We've heard yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Second, even though the police have responded, okay, there hasn't been any incident that I'm aware of where any of the residents that reside at Toddy Place, that's another assisted living, at Clay's, that violated anybody's rights in that and became aggressive with them in the street, whereby they committed any crimes. Okay? If so, we weren't notified. So the police may have come, but it was not as a result of a robbery. It was not as a result of a B&E, a breaking and entering. It was not as a result of any destruction to any of the properties of any of the people here in Blackstone. If so, we were not notified. Okay? Clay's is not a locked facility. And unless someone is proven to be incompetent, they have a right to leave the facility. We are not a locked facility. We are an open community. We're in violation of their rights if we deny them the opportunity of leaving the facility if they want to. Then we may be, if we did otherwise, then we would be facing an entirely different situation. And that's in violation of their rights. Okay? We at Clay's try to work with our residents. And some of the things that have gone on, maybe if someone contacted us, in some of those instances, maybe we could have done something to work with it. Okay? In terms of the issues that were mentioned with the medications, we are not a private pay facility, which means which is the facility that the young lady works at, is private pay. Okay, we're not private pay. Some of our clients come in, they do not have the funds for the medication. We work with them in getting the medication, but it may take a while to get it. Okay? There hasn't been any instances where the same violation has been from the exact same person, because we do work to get that medication. And also in terms of oversight, several administrators have been dismissed or let go by us because we were having certain issues at the facility. Okay? And during the incident that you mentioned, you would find one particular administrator's name. Since that time, you'll see another administrator's name, because we are trying to do what we need to do to take care of our people. Okay? So it's not that we're closing our eyes to some of the situations that are going on. We're there. But then again, we're dealing with people that have mental illnesses. And that's something I think people are okay with it if it's in another city, in another state, in another neighborhood. But I don't want you in my backyard. okay? That's the primary focus of it. You can be anywhere else, but don't be near me. And I think your Representative Deeds, for instance, we have issues with people with mental illness. Now, tonight, I have someone with me that works in the field in intensive treatment with clients that have mental illnesses. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to her. This is Mrs. Mary Alice Poole Evans, and she works directly with people that have mental illnesses. And I think she can speak more to the subject.
Thank you very
And
much.
then I'll come back.
And welcome to Blackstone. Is she employed by your facility or at your facility?
She's employed at Chesterfield Mental Health.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, thank you.
Now, she does work with one of the facilities that I work with, which is Toddy Place in Chesterfield County.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
afternoon.
Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. I'm going to leave each one of you one of my cards.
Okay.
And take one, pass one. If you notice, it says Mary Alice Poole and it's scratched Evans. I wrote a book called Walking in Hope, Living in Grace, and I got married to a man in the book.
Congratulations.
I had to scratch it through. I am sure you know the basic needs of people with mental illness and without mental illness. That is housing, shelter, food, physical and mental care, and medication management. Let me review housing. Most people who live in an assisted living facility make about $780 a month. Can you live off of that? And that includes their spending money. That's pretty low. Mental illness is an equal opportunity destroyer. Mental illness does not discriminate. It affects people of all races, gender, rich or poor. Statistics state that 1 out of every 5 people have a mental illness. So in this room, 1 out of 5 people have a mental illness. That could be paranoia, fear of flying, fear of getting in a train. That could be paranoid of something or other. It could be obsessive compulsive disorder. It could be alcoholism. Not only alcoholism, it could be substance abuse. Or one may suffer from a major mental illness, such as depression, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, major depression, or schizoaffective being the really highs and the really lows. Or they can be bipolar, who also is the highs and lows, plus hearing voices, plus others. You see, it's a sense of unreality when it's a person with schizophrenia. They have to deal with the senses, the 5 senses, and they become overly sensitive to the 5 senses. The assisted living facility is not only a housing, but a home that provides meals, medication management, and a safe place for people to live. It also has structure, which is very important for a person with mental illness. These things are taken for granted by all of us, except for the people with mental illness. You see, 37 years ago, I had a mental break. After I lost 4 babies at birth, went through 3 divorces, and I was raising somebody else's children. And I was holding a job at the largest printing company on the East Coast as a customer service rep. But it got pretty ugly when I directed traffic with no clothes on, naked as a jaybird in the middle of the road. I always say, thank God it was in Charles City County where nobody saw me. It was a country road. You see, after I got in the hospital, before I got in the hospital, I was green warned, which now is called a temporary detaining order. A green order was given because you got the green piece of paper, and then you were put into the hospital. I was in the hospital for 30 days. Insurance wouldn't cover that now. But back in 1981, insurance covered a 30-day stint. I worked hard with a therapist to get well. In 1985, I started the first manic depressive support group here in Richmond, Virginia. I started off with 8 people, and it now is up to 50 or 60 that still come once a month at Tucker Pavilion. You see, I wanted to get well, and I wanted to advocate for those with people with mental illness because I was one of them. I am one of them. I still take my medicine. I am one of them. But I have graduated from Loyola University with a degree in pastoral care in 2000. So it changed my perspective when I graduated from 2000. And I was employed by Chesterfield Mental Health. I worked in the intensive community treatment team as a qualified mental health provider. And I worked in their homes. I worked under bridges. I worked in trailers. I worked anywhere I was sent so that I could advocate and help others that were just like me. I have been an employee in Chesterfield Mental Health for 13 years, and I retired in 2015. And then they wouldn't let me go, and I work part-time now in a social rehab community where 60 people come into the facility. And we work on coping skills. We work on medication. What medication are you taking? Some of them didn't even have a clue what they were taking. Now, what are the side effects? So we work on a lot of skills. I work there 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And my groups consist of 20 to 30 people in my groups because they want to come to learn. My motto is hope. Hope to me is not a wish. It is a commitment to the way I live my life. Hope to me is helping myself first, then others, because I am no good to anybody if I don't help me first. Always overcoming my barriers. I didn't go to a baby shower until 2000. In 1971, 72, in that years did I go to a baby shower.
Ms. Evans, I don't want to cut you off. Your story is amazing, and I have loved ones in my family with mental health. So I don't want anyone to think for a minute that no one on the panel is sensitive to the need. I want to stay to the issue. The issue is clays, and you may anything you have to share about clays is what we're really.
That's where I'm going right now.
Okay, very good.
Okay, my parents were my advocate. I don't know how many people are advocates, but my parents were my advocate to be where I once was. This community can be a stepping stone or a stumbling block. That's what my dad used to tell me. You can be a stepping stone or a stumbling block. Have you visited Clay's house? Have you visited the 47 residents that live there? Do you know their name? Do you call them by name when you see them on the street and talk to them? Does this community in Blackstone have any organizations like women's clubs that can come in and play bingo with them and know their names and help them? Instead of wandering the streets, they could be doing something. Do men's organizations provide movie tickets once a month or going to a movie? It's a treat to go to a movie. Can you imagine it being a treat to go to the movie or having a pizza? Nail shops can offer a manicure, and hair shops can also offer those. Organizations can seek out speakers that subjects are related to mental health and mental health issues. You can please go to the CIT program. I'm part of the CIT program, which is Crisis Intervention Training. I am one of the instructors for the CIT program. Are your police being part of the CIT program?
How much work do you do at this facility?
None. Not now. I used to do.
So you don't know any of the residents here?
Oh, well, they all come to Chester House.
Okay.
Not all of them, but most of them come to Chester House. But I've been working with Ms. Hicks for a long time because when I was on the intensive community treatment, these people need housing. So it helped them get off the streets, basically.
You asked some good questions, and there are numerous churches that are always looking for a mission or something to do. And a lot of times we ride by some of the greatest needs, all of us, myself included. But I do want to, Mr. Morgan raised a good question. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but we do need to move along. I want to get back to the issue at hand, which is this facility.
I have
and this
one
permit.
small paragraph.
Go right ahead. Okay.
Is there a social rehab center or a drop-in center here in Blackstone? I don't know. Where they can go for a socialization daily and have something to do. I am not talking about a center that's 1 hour or 2 hours away. I'm talking one right here in Blackstone. This town can be a stepping stone for those with mental illness. They don't have to be a stumbling block. They can be a stepping stone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting me not only tell my story, but advocate for those that cannot talk for themselves. Thank you.
You've given a great firsthand testimony, and I want to, before we get back to Ms. Hicks, Ms. Bonnell, we'll get to you in just a moment. There's some questions come to mind. I'm just trying to get to the gist here. What you're hearing from residents, Ms. Hicks, is not any lack of compassion or concern for the well-being here. I think what I'm hearing from residents is they fear this is a powder keg. And I don't think anyone wants to be in elected office or even a resident of Blackstone and to say, wow, y'all had a chance. You saw the warning signs and what's his name went off and hurt that child or hurt somebody. And I don't think, and my comment may be unfair because I don't believe you can stand at that podium tonight and guarantee the people of Blackstone that what I just described will not happen.
But can you be a drunk driver and be on the streets? It's
But,
the same thing.
but here's the thing. This facility, and no fault of yours, we have zoning regulations at Blackstone. This facility, for whatever reason, and I hate to use this word, it slipped in under the cracks. None of us saw it. But the mission of Clay's, where people bought their homes and lived for years, it was old folks' home. It was old folks' homes. And the mission changed, and it's a noble mission you have. But I'm not advocating for or against you. What I've talked to in social media and face-to-face is people are scared. And you heard the young man here he's renting a very nice home from a nice home in Blackstone, and he wouldn't buy it. So what can you, and it may be an unfair question, but can you offer this council some assurance to maybe step it up? And Ms. Bonnell did ask a question. What is your staffing? Right now, as we speak at Clay's, how many employees are there? I don't know. I'm asking because I don't know.
Okay, a couple of things.
Okay.
Number one, first, as far as the guarantee, no. But I also can't guarantee that someone may not walk down the street with a gun and come in here and start shooting.
Understand
There
that.
are no guarantees.
Right. But we play the odds.
I know, right, we do. But there are no guarantees. But according to the statistics I gave you, it doesn't necessarily mean just because I'm mentally ill and just because I walk down the street and I may speak to myself that I'm coming over to hurt you.
Right. But it's unsettling. You admit it's unsettling.
Well,
For the average resident who does not have the experience you have, it's unsettling. For someone you don't know that comes at you maybe pointing or even, gets too close to your space to ask questions. I mean,
well, true, but that's mental illness.
right.
Okay, I've been a social worker for umpteen years, quite a few. And I've worked with a lot of different clientele. Okay, I chose to work with the mentally ill because I felt there was a need there. And basically because of what you just said, people are afraid of people that have mental illnesses. Okay, in some instances, there aren't any basis for it except they feel violated, which is exactly what you said. Okay, they do certain things. They do talk to themselves. Okay, they may act. They hear voices.
Hold on a second. I want to make sure that Ms. Hicks has the floor. We'll have anyone else who wants to comment, we can come to the podium and comment. I want to make sure we can hear Ms. Hicks.
Okay, we do hear voices. Okay, that's a part of their mental illnesses. Okay, depending upon the kind of mental illness that they have. Okay, that happens. But again, that does not, we're always afraid of the unknown. Okay, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be that violent. Because as I said before, even though the police have come there on several instances, but there hasn't been because of, as I said before, harm to anyone. They may have issues within the facility among themselves, but not out in the community where it affects anyone else. If so, as I said before, we weren't notified of it. There hasn't been any bank robberies. There hasn't been any assault cases. There hasn't been anything like that.
Can you control, I hate to interrupt, but I'm just trying to, we got another.
Okay.
It was pointed out earlier, and I do believe the person, and you can't be perfect with the clock.
Right.
But can you, by law, one of your conditions is 9 o'clock curfew. Can you control, can you make a rule constitutionally? Can you prohibit them from leaving the facility at 9 o'clock?
Okay, here's what we do. We lock our doors
You lock the doors.
at 9 o'clock, which is what I said I would do
Okay.
when we did
But
this.
they can
That our
slip out.
doors would be locked at 9 o'clock.
So if they left at 8:50 to walk down to Dollar General, they may be knocking on the door at 9:20 or 9:30.
Okay, we encourage them not to.
Okay.
Okay, we encourage them not to. But these are adults that have rights. Even though they have a mental
Understand.
illness, they have a right.
How many folks are there at Clay's right now, roughly? 50, 53?
No, We have 47,
How many employees, as we speak right now, are at Clay's watching those people?
6.
Okay, is that number, what is the number at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m.? Is it the same number?
Same, this, what time
Like,
is
like, what is the smallest number of employees you'll have at one time at Clay's?
At 12 o'clock,
4?
4.
Okay. So
And that's when they're in bed asleep.
you've always got a minimum of 4 staffers there throughout the
Yes.
day?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Remember,
More during the day,
I've hogged the
but
floor.
up
Members
to
of council.
4 at night.
Mr. Morgan.
I was in the Marines for almost 6 years. I was a police officer in this community for 20. I have been walking with my wife, with our dogs, on occasion, where when we got close to your facility, we moved to the other side of the street. Because behavior that I was witnessing and my wife was witnessing was not very appropriate. And this is from a male subject that resides in your facility with his hands in his pants, right there at the street, talking at us as we're walking by. I did not call the police department because that kind of behavior has been seen more than once. And I believe what you're missing is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. What we have here on the bottom, which is the most important, is your physiological needs, correct? Your food, your water, heat, anything of that nature, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right above that, safety and security, which is where we are as people that live in the community. I understand above that is love and belonging, then self-esteem and self-actualization. Where you are on the pyramid is not where we are on the pyramid. Although you do have a facility where people do have mental problems,
Right.
you also have a facility where you can't force them to take their medication. And you have medical technicians, am I correct, that give them medicine? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you have medical technicians that give them medication. How trained are they to see what kind of adverse effects that the medications are having?
They're all registered med techs, which means they did take the state board.
But as far as effects, how much documentation, which I know the numerous violations that you had on medication administration.
Yes, and as I said before, the administrator that we had during that time is no longer with us because of certain reasons. But all of our med techs are registered med techs.
Okay, so
which
where-
means they had to pass the board, which also deals with side effects.
Right.
In addition to that, we have a psychiatrist
Okay.
that comes into the facility to see the clients,
Okay.
as well
So
as
if-
a
If
medical
your client's
doctor.
not taking the medication, how effective is a psychiatrist gonna be?
Okay, you forget one more right. One of the
Right of
rights that
refusal.
our
That's right of
residents
refusal.
also have, right, is the right of refusal.
Right. So that's not benefiting the community if they refuse to take the
scary.
medication and you're
It,
still
it
letting
may
them
be,
come out
it
in
may be
public.
scary, but what do you, if you have an adult that again has not been ruled incompetent, okay, if they refuse their meds, that is their right.
Right,
But
so-
also our right.
But what I'm saying is, when they refuse to take their medication and you let them go out the door, which you can't keep them there, then you're violating our safety and security of this Maslow pyramid.
No, because in our policies and procedures, they only can,
So
they
your,
only can
your
refuse their
institution may be
meds
better
a
suited
certain.
not near a residential area.
No. What I was going to say was that our policies and procedures state that if they miss their medication, if they refuse their medication a certain number of times, then we have a right to request that they be discharged.
How many have been discharged
And that's
for
what we
refusing to
have.
take the medication?
I can't give you a number, but I can tell you some have been.
Well, on proffer number 5,
Where's
and I
proffer
guess
number
you
5?
agreed to it when we did this several years ago.
Yeah.
It says if a resident refuses to take medication, the doctor will be consulted. That's meaning one time. If this behavior continues, which to me means 2 times or more.
The
the
30-day
resident will
notice
give
is given.
30-day notice.
Exactly.
But you're talking, y'all can't do anything about it.
No,
So
I
why
didn't.
was this agreed upon to begin with?
That's not what I said. I said if they miss medication, then we do have a right in our policies and procedures to request that to have them discharged. That was what I just said.
I mean, is it after 10 times?
Well, the
that
state
it becomes a
says,
problem?
3 times. Okay? The state says 3 times. And we have discharged people as a result of not taking their medication.
I have a question.
That has been done. I can't tell you offhand how many, but that has been done.
Councilman Miller has a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm hearing about the security, and it seems to be a problem. can't you, okay, what about if you cut your curfew back an hour and you hire an additional person for each shift?
I don't think that's really the answer to what they're asking for, to cut our curfew back, because they're saying right now that they're not coming in at 9.
Well, some of these things have been described in broad daylight. I believe Mrs. Green, several of her episodes, I don't think
Right.
it were in broad.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the curfew at night. We are doing, now maybe if you all in the community see some of these things happening, maybe that would be a time to contact us and let us know. Give us a chance to actually work closer with our clients. We can't see what they do when they leave the premises. But if someone contact us and let us know, and if we know there's a pattern of that particular client acting that particular way, then I guarantee you that we will take steps. We have gotten rid of a number of our clients as a result of that.
Okay.
And one in particular, when I came here before, one of the proffers said we had 2 sexual offenders. Now we only have 1.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
Okay, that person is no longer with us.
One was a male and one was a female, I believe.
Right. Now the female is also labeled as a sexual offender, but her offense was standing in her door in a trailer park with a slip on.
Right.
Okay? She was labeled as a sexual offender. She didn't touch anyone, but she was labeled because she was standing in her door with a slip on.
Well, the same could have happened to Mary Alice when she was directing traffic in Charles City County. Luckily, no one saw you. But
Right.
I think where we are, and this is what I'm trying to, I want to commend the mission you've undertaken is a thankless one, and I want to assure you that even though you've heard some pointed questions tonight, everyone on this panel, especially Mr. Morgan, who's in the healthcare field, has a real compassion for these folks. And I'm sitting here listening to a lot of the things you've said tonight and saying, why haven't I, Billy Colburn, gone or tried to engage? I speak to them in the street sometimes. When I was campaigning, I gave them pamphlets. But go inside your facility. I've never been in your facility since you bought it, so that's on me. I'm gonna try to be more proactive there. I think whatever's gonna happen tonight or whenever the right time comes, no one, yourself, these people, myself, are gonna be totally happy. Because I know what you're saying about someone can walk in tonight with a gun or rob us, hold us hostage, but it's and you can blame the media all you want. It's those law of averages. And mental health is increasing. There are more and more people with needs. And the way it's been described is somewhat of a powder keg. And like you said, someone that's going to be scared is going to always be scared. I do think one of the best things you said tonight is if we call your number, your facility, we'll get a human being, and the complaints will be taken seriously. I'm hearing
Yes.
that. I'm hearing that from you tonight.
That's exactly what you're hearing.
Okay, members of council, what else?
I've
Yes.
got a few things.
Yes.
When the current administrator, when were they hired?
In November 23rd.
Last year?
Yes, just November
All right, well, If
23rd.
you look at September 10th, 2018, the last complaint, the last review, inspection was that the facility failed to ensure medication was administered. I thought that, you said that lady, that administrator was,
I said that before. They also remember that a client has a right to refuse the medication.
But the medications weren't available.
Okay, and also, I also addressed the fact that we're not in a private pay facility.
What does that mean? When you say that, I want to make sure I'm understanding. When you say that, that means Medicaid.
That means Medicaid.
Yeah.
It means Medicaid.
But it doesn't affect the level of care. Well, if you were private pay or Medicaid, you're going to treat. I would.
I'm going to treat you the same way, but I don't have $1,000 sitting here that I can call the pharmacy and say, hey, my Medicaid hasn't gone into effect yet. Can you send me the medication?
All right.
That can happen in a private pay facility, but not in a Medicaid facility. Okay, we have to have Medicaid in order for our clients to get their medication. And also, in some instances, what happens is, and it's not good, but what happens sometimes is the fact that something may happen and the Medicaid might lapse for a certain period of time. The pharmacy isn't going to send us medication COD, or with the idea that, okay, I'll get paid later for it, I'll send it to you today.
Right.
But as I said before, we will do whatever we have to do to try as much as possible to make the community feel safe. But as far as locking people in, we can't do that.
We understand that. We understand that.
Okay.
I personally am the individual. I've called the police 2 times on urination. One right in front of Dollar General on Main Street, and the same individual in Miss Green's front yard. Now, I do believe we have some responsibility as the police. I don't know if they're calling the facility, but
No.
either way, the same individual has been doing this repeatedly. I mean, and you mentioned no crimes. That's a crime. Whether it's robbery and breaking in and all that, yeah, that's a crime. That's a major crime. But trespassing, urinating on property, that's a crime too. So
But how
we
many-
have to
I'm sorry, go on.
pretty often. I mean, the minor things that we look at as not a crime, they are a crime. It's some sort of crime, yes. So we have to take those serious as the 8 of us up here.
Okay, but
But listen
how
what
many
she's
times have
saying
you
now.
contacted us
she's
to
saying
say,
now.
hey, this is what happened?
You're going to be getting calls, I think.
So that
She's
we
saying
can,
now
I
if
believe
you
we're
come.
gonna get the calls from the police department every time there's a report, yes.
and also ensure that it's a resident from Clays and not someone from someplace else.
Well, I can personally guarantee I know that they were residents from
Yeah,
Clays. I mean,
Then all we need is the name.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
I
it's
think we
what
don't
you
know the name. We can describe them. I mean, I live right down the corner, right down the road, but I did promise Miss Bennell and
Okay.
Mrs. Green. And that, yes, Miss.
You said that you have ejected people for not taking, refusing the medicines. Have you allowed anyone to stay who didn't refuse the medication?
We let them go.
Every time. So if they refuse the medication twice, you let them
Yeah,
go.
here's what happens. Sometimes we may have someone that refused meds once or twice, okay? We let them know, we give them a 30-day notice to move. They start taking their meds. So we don't have another issue with them until maybe 60 days or 80, or, something like that later. They stop. They may stop once or twice, then they start back again. Okay, in a situation like that, no, we haven't discharged them. But if they continuously refuse, then yes, we have.
well, I think we need to change proffer number 5 then, if that's the case.
What's number
Because
5?
the refusing medication. Because it doesn't say that after they refuse 2 or 3 times, then they can begin again and they restart their time.
You're saying on the second of refusal, they're gone.
That's the way it's read.
Right.
Well, I don't know if you can do that, because even if you got somebody,
But that's what I'm saying.
even if
It's
you have
obviously
somebody,
needs to be reviewed.
even if you have somebody that's healthy, they might get to a point in the healthcare setting where they wanna take a
They wanna
medication,
take
you
the
can't make them do it.
Cause you get
But
that
if they're
way
picking
yourself.
up a day or two later, then
You
that's,
can't do that.
that's, you know.
I saw Mr.
if
Wayman
it-
Mitchell had a hand up, and then Miss Bennell. I couldn't tell if you. I'll go after. All right, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Wayman Mitchell.
Mr. Mayor, I worked in research and came across a lot of these problems when I was in the Army. And we had to give everybody a chance to make themselves right. And I think if the community get together and everybody see these things, start a program on reporting it so she can do something about it. That's what she's asking. It's gonna take a whole community to do this. Everybody get it, if you see somebody doing wrong, call the police contact her or have you do something with this thing. That's the only way you're gonna handle this. Keep throwing the fault back at each other, that's not working.
I agree. Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much for that. I saw Mr. Chad Forehand had a comment.
Ms. Hicks, actually not being argumentative with you, just a few questions for you. You made the statement, everyone says they're compassionate about it, and as long as it's not in their backyard and things like that. And you're not my neighbor, Clays is my neighbor, and when you say not in my backyard, I'm talking physically in my backyard, you are correct, I do not want that. So if you're telling me every single time I have an issue, and when residents walk past that fence and turn left, I'm right there. So if you're telling me every single time I have an issue, I'm to call Clays and it will be taken care of, is that correct? And are you there, or who is there do I need to ask to speak to?
You can actually speak to the administrator.
And-
No, I am not there. I work
Okay.
with 4 assisted living facilities.
Okay, and so that's, at least, I'm not coming at you from anywhere else, just me personally, me to you. I am their neighbor, not your neighbor. So the issues that I'm describing are not with you, they're the issues that are happening on the property that I'm on. You see what I'm saying?
And I understand that. But in a sense, it is me
You're the owner.
because
Get that, I was just saying that.
I am a part of Clays.
Okay.
Okay, but what I am saying is that give us the opportunity to correct some of the things that you're talking about.
Correct.
If you have issues with that, but you've never contacted us,
I
then
tried.
we don't know anything about it.
Yes, ma'am. That's why I'm trying to ask you,
more than that.
who is the administrator's name I need to
Call,
ask for?
call the administrator, Miss Adrian Bush.
Adrian Bush?
Mm-hmm.
Because to answer that question, I have tried, and I can never get anybody on the phone. But that has happened.
Okay, well, if you'll try again
Yes,
and you
ma'am.
don't get anyone, then I'll give you my number, call me.
Yes, ma'am.
And I you know,
I don't have an issue with
and
that.
I want to assure you too, the staff, because you don't know all that people. The people who have spoken tonight, all earnest, they're not going to be making up stuff, or just because someone's walking in the road, you're not going to get those type of phone calls. The people here are friends and neighbors. I can tell you that you're not going to get made up calls or inflated calls just because it's a hot button issue. I would recommend to council, and this is totally up to the council, but what I'm hearing to try to move us along, and I do want to let the Clays people know this, we've spent more time on this issue than any issue recent, because it is that important. It is a public safety and a well-being of our residents and your residents. I think we ought to go back to the 6-month review and give 6 months to see if these things can be worked out. I think 3 months would be a little bit cumbersome, to be honest with you, Ms. Bonnell. Every fourth council meeting, that would be
And that's fine, I'll work with you, but just to let you know, we have another assisted living facility in Chesterfield County. We've had a conditional license with them since 1988.
Where is it? Is it in a residential
Not one
neighborhood?
time.
Is it in a residential neighborhood?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Because it's a conditional use permit.
Okay,
Since 1988.
okay.
Our backyard backs the fire department. That's how close it is. Even the firemen at the fire department will come to Toddy to talk with our residents. They've been through Toddy to see exactly how it's set up. Okay? If anything happens, they call Toddy. And not one time have we had to go back to Chesterfield County for a review. And that's been since 1988.
But you understand this is sort of new to Blackstone, and it is, and you're not offended by the 6-month review. I mean, it's not. Are you upset about that, or?
No, I'm not upset about the 6 months review. It's just that maybe, okay, Chesterfield County is different from Blackstone. I understand that. But there are a lot of things in Blackstone, like for instance, Clay's Rest Home that you all referred to before had mentally ill people. Some of those people are still with us now. So this is not something new. It may be newer in that we have younger people there now.
It's the mobility factor. It's the strength factor. It's that sort of thing. Yes.
Right.
I think you're gonna find out once you start getting the calls that it's gonna be just a certain number of them. 'Cause I know it's only 2 in particular that.
Right. There's one
So it's
person.
not all of them. It's only certain ones that are causing the
And
issue.
we've been notified in advance. Those few may not be there now.
Well, you're gonna have 6 months. You'll be getting notified.
Okay?
What is council's? I've got to wrap this up.
think-
I called on you a minute ago, Ms. Bonnell.
Yes.
All right.
One, members of my church come and get members of Clay's, and they attend worship with me. So I know people at Clay's. I know people who reside at Clay's. I shake their hands every morning. I give them hugs. I know people who reside at Clay's. Okay, two. So the implication that we are not involved is really a little unfair. Two, this is an escalating situation. This isn't something that's just happened overnight. This is an escalating situation. And it impacts safety. I have a couple questions. You want us to adapt to you. That's kind of an unrealistic expectation. You're in our established neighborhood. Well, I don't feel like we should have to adapt to you. Also, wait a minute. Also, why are you in a residential neighborhood accepting people who may not be able to buy their own medication when you have a special use permit that specifically states they have to take their medication? It doesn't say, the rule says they would take their meds, not that they would take their meds if they were available. I think that's a legitimate point. I also think that, we have seen in this volume that I printed off from the Department of Social Services where a physician was not notified that a resident had refused to take their medications. Not once, not twice, but numerous times. So you didn't notify them. So you're not following the special use conditions, which is a violation of the special use permit. And it impacts our safety. And Billy, I love the 6 month. I like what you're saying. I'm right there at it.
I know.
He's right there at it.
No.
She's right there at it.
I know.
This is an issue. And I'm sorry if you are offended. I truly am. because I was in support of this. I understand mental health, you know, don't come here and act like I don't, because I do. But the fact of the matter is, this is a safety thing. No one's broken into my house. But you know what, how do I know someone's not going to? They stood in my driveway and yelled at me. How does that give me the warm fuzzies for your facility? You know, I mean, and you've come here angry.
I'm
You
not
know,
angry, first of all.
Let's don't characterize each other's demeanor.
Please, please.
I do want council to strongly take what we are saying in consideration.
All right,
Very strongly.
we hear you.
An obligation.
We do. I'm going to close the public hearing. Doesn't mean we're not going to continue to comment. Members of council, I've run my mouth too long tonight. What is council's pleasure? There's a variety of options.
I believe the property needs to be revisited simply because, number 5, I mean, it's too many ifs, ands, or buts to it. I think all of them need to be reviewed. We know fencing has obviously been in place.
Yes.
Additional lighting, has that been installed? We don't have a clue.
Yes, it
Cameras,
has.
can we see the cameras are installed? I mean,
Yes.
we don't know, so that's why I think we need to look at all these and say, all right, do some of them, I mean, do they need to be altered, do they need to be changed?
Okay, had you been into the facility, you would see. I think you saw the cameras. The lighting is there, the cameras are there. Okay, the things that we addressed in this have been completed. The one we're talking about is the medication issue now. And as I said before, I'm not expecting anyone to adapt to Clay's, and that's not what I said. What I said was that if you are having issues with our clients, let us know, and then we will take appropriate action. I did not say anything else. I said notify us. We're complaining about people being in the yards and other items, but Clay's, and you did say you attempted to notify someone, but we hadn't been notified. I was not aware of it. We can take action against people that are violating the rights of other folks, like trespassing, for instance. Sure. We can give them a notice to move. Now, some of the people that were committing some of these acts have already been